everybody out there in podcast land. This is Suzanne A. Wells, and you have landed on episode number 90 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is December 7th, 2022. My guest in this episode is Mary in Indiana. She is a seasoned seller who has come and gone and come back again to eBay over the last 20 years. And since we are smack dab in the middle of the holiday season, let me remind you about my BOLO books and 2023 calendars in my eBay store. These make a great gift as they are unique. Nothing else like them exists. The calendars include 12 BOLOs, one for each month of 2023. And of course, you can look at all those as soon as you open your calendar once you've received it in the mail. But these are not in previous BOLO books. I designed the calendars to give you encouragement, motivation, reminders, and accountability tasks. So make sure and start 2023 out on the right foot. It's like I'm there with you every day in the trenches, doing all the same eBay things you are doing. And the link to my eBay store is below the podcast. Okay, let's get into the conversation with Mary.
Hello, listeners. I have Mary with me today after some technology challenges at the beginning. We got it going on. So how are you doing this morning, Mary?
Very good, very good. It's a little cool in Indiana, but it's much better than the past 3 or 4 days. So it's looking up.
Okay, now where exactly are you located?
I live in southeastern Indiana, and it's about 40 miles northwest of Cincinnati and about 60 miles east of Indianapolis.
A lot of sellers in Indiana.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we were chatting a little bit before we started recording about when we first crossed paths, and it was so long ago, neither one of us can really remember.
Right, exactly.
But it's like,
exactly.
Your last name is Disney, and like, I remember that, and I'm sure a lot of people do. And it's like, you kind of pop up and then you disappear for a little while and then you come back. And so I had been seeing you again, resurfacing on the Facebook group and commenting and posting. And so you've had a major life change in the last year. So let's just get into all the stuff about eBay. So when did you first start, and what brought you to eBay?
So I think I've been on eBay since 2003. I was not selling. Around 2007, I believe I started selling. My nephew got me hooked on eBay. I always kid him about that. He was trying to pay some bills off, declutter his house, and he was telling me all about it. So I came home, looked around my living room, dining room, 15 to 20 Longenberger baskets that just was sitting there. So I'm like, okay, here we go. We're going to start Longenberger. So that's what I did. I started just getting rid of all. I think I kept 1 or 2 baskets, but I got rid of all of them. I don't think I ever shipped anything from the post office before that. So I think that was my biggest learning, trying to figure that out, but it was easy. And then the computer stuff was easy because I work computers every day. So that part was easy. PayPal was interesting. I never, got used to that. But that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. Are you anywhere near Longaberger headquarters?
I think it's about 3-4 hours away.
Okay.
I know people that used to go there for their annual, I forget what it's called, but they would go up there. And one of the ladies that babysat my children sold it. So that's how I got
Okay.
into that.
Well, yeah, they're in Ohio. So I have heard people
Right.
that are close enough to go to their annual event where they can stock up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Indiana, is that also the home of Vera Bradley?
Yes. And they have that sale, I think, close to Indianapolis every year. So
Right. Yes.
I've never been, but I know people that's been.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. So a lot going on up there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you started with Longaberger baskets, and now were you working full time through all of that time period?
Yes, I was working full time, so I decided I needed a side hustle, and I thought it would be kind of fun. So I did that. I've been like I'll do it a lot, then I'll branch back, do a lot more, or go back and forth. So that was um, pretty part. I was working like maybe 10 hours a week on my eBay stuff.
Uh-huh.
That's what I was doing when I was um, doing that. Then I got a little burnout, and then my corporate America job was I was traveling a lot of hours. So around 2016, 17, I quit. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019.
Oh
And
no.
then I was off work and everything, and recovering and all that. And then I like kind of got bored at home. So I'm like, I need to start doing my eBay again. So I listed some things that kept me going during that period of time. Then I went back to work, and then I was still selling, part time. And then I retired in December of last year. And I'm like, my plan was for this to be my little hobby, do some extra money, those kind of things. So that's where I am.
Okay. Okay. Wow. What a journey. Congratulations on making it through that illness.
Yep.
That's huge.
All good. All
And
good.
I hear that all the time with people who are struggling with their health or something, that eBay is good because it's like a boredom buster. You can do it at home. You can do it when you feel good. It's something else to focus on. Sometimes
Correct.
reading a book just doesn't cut it. It's like,
Yeah.
you're very involved when you're working on your eBay. You're not really, your mind can't wander a whole lot because you're focused on what you're doing. So,
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
it's a kind of a competition for me. How low can I buy stuff and how much I can sell it for? It's a game.
Yes.
I think that's the part, and goals. You can make goals, which that was my whole life, making goals and reaching them. So it's fun.
Now let's talk about your professional experience. What kind of work did you do? Or you retired last year, so maybe you don't want to think about that anymore, but people like to know, what is this person's background?
So I started in the medical laboratory field, worked there for 14 years. I primarily did microbiology.
Oh.
We went, now I'm going to tell my age kind of. When I started there, we were all paper. I got into the computers because nobody else wanted to mess with them. So for my department, and then I became assistant system manager, became system manager. So I got into computers, left there, I did some consulting computer stuff. And then I got a full-time job. I was project manager for a technology group for a financial services company. My job moved to North Carolina, and I didn't want to move there. So then I got another job, and I was working project manager for annuity and life insurance group, and that's where I retired from. So
Okay.
a little journey there.
In North Carolina, were you like in the Research Triangle area?
Yeah, Raleigh.
Yeah, Raleigh. Okay.
That was let's see, between 2011, 2013. That was the big move for my company. And so I worked the 2013 of hiring my replacements, getting that stuff. So I was there a lot, but then I didn't want to move at that time.
Yeah, moving is, I just
You
did
know.
yeah, but no, I knew when you came on Zoom immediately, we had a little snafu with the internet, and so Mary's like pulling out her phone, and she got all these cords, and she's figuring it out. And so you said you had 3 backups to do this Zoom call, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so you said that you were doing Zoom calls 8 hours a day before you retired. So that would have been 2020, 2021. That's a lot of Zooming.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yep. I was the project manager for the installation of Zoom. So it's my friend.
Yay.
Sometimes.
I think I love being people's first experience on Zoom, because then they know how to do it and they're not intimidated. And there you go. It's just another skill that most of the world is learning right now, or already knows, because it's just another way to communicate. But anyway, so now we have your backstory. Let's talk about some things you've sold on eBay, some memorable sales, not necessarily the highest dollar, but maybe things that surprised you.
First one that got me really hooked is I went to a thrift store, and I found 2 coffee mugs for 50 cents. One was a Starbucks Washington, D.C. cherry tree one.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, it was very plain. So I listed that, and I got $65 for it, and I was just totally shocked. So I think that was what got me hooked, is the wow, Then I probably listened to you. I did a lot of the high-end women clothing,
Mm-hmm.
and that did very good until COVID. And then COVID, I don't think I sold any clothing for 6 months. So then I kind of turned and went to more collectibles and like mid-century modern, those kind of things. I found those and Pyrex is one of my favorites.
Oh, good.
So that's kind of the direction I went.
I agree with you that the clothing market shifted dramatically once everybody was staying at home.
Right.
I used to sell all kinds of, I guess you would call it, office attire, and Taylor black skirts, nicer workwear. And I mean, that was just like a deflated balloon. It just went away. And I did have more success with swimwear and athletic wear, because after lockdown and was over, well, I guess it depends on where you were, but the weather got warm. It was summer, and people were ready to get outside. They'd been inside, quarantined, whatever, for 2 or 3 months. And so there was a surge in athletic apparel and outdoorsy kind of stuff. So I shifted to that. And into this day, here we are, November 2022, and I don't even look at that kind of clothing anymore. The office attire, it just doesn't sell for me anymore.
No, and I would go to Goodwills. I had a Goodwill next to pretty close to everywhere I worked, and I always had to work kind of far from my home because we're in the country, rural part. And the 99-cent sales at Goodwill went away, so that didn't help either.
Mm-hmm.
But then then I slowly got into the collectibles. It's kind of all the things that I didn't like, or my mom would have, like the avocado green, the harvest gold, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
I saw those selling. So the Pyrex bowls have been very good for me. And I'm now doing more of the estate online auctions. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I do a lot of now. I do a few yard sales, but I the online estate auctions is what I like. It's convenient for me.
If they have enough pictures to look at.
Yeah, and funny you say that, because the one I use, there's like 4 or 5 different couples, and each couple runs the auctions. So there's this one couple that they do a phenomenal job on the pictures and the description. So it's kind of funny. I can tell whose auction it is. They all work
Right.
from the same company, but I can tell whose descriptions and those kind of things. And of course, I can go look at them if I want to, but I usually don't.
Right. I want to back up 1 second to what you said about Goodwill, the 99-cent items that went away. I noticed a lot of questions on the Facebook group about, my Goodwill did this. Is everybody seeing that? They did away with different sales, or the half price color, the dollar color, whatever it is. And I just want to say that all these Goodwills are run differently. There's not
Correct.
like a national rule that, we're going to do this. It's whatever's in your area. So I just moved to South Carolina, and their system is completely different than Georgia. I'm loving it. They do have the 99-cent item all week. Georgia had it on one day, Mondays, when the color changed. Sorry, color changed on Sundays, but the oldest color went on sale for $1 on Mondays. So you had something every day. You had senior day one day, you had the new color of the week was Sundays, all of that. But I'm seeing things in South Carolina that I never saw in Georgia, as far as how they run their sales and when they mark things down. And so it really just depends on where you are. There's just no one size fits all Goodwill rule, because they're all run differently. And even in Georgia, there's Goodwill of North Georgia, there's Goodwill of other areas. So I guess it's like a franchise in some ways, that there's just different rules. So don't assume that just because your Goodwill did something that everybody's experiencing that, because it's not the case.
Correct. And like you said, like I was surprised because I saw the difference between Cincinnati and Indianapolis, that those store regions. So, and I'm like, I'm 25 miles from like the Indianapolis one. So I do both. So,
Oh,
but I
good.
did both. I don't do it very often. Yep.
Do you have the bins?
Let's see. Oh, no. There might be one in Cincinnati, but I'm not aware of them.
Okay. So that doesn't attract you.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I think you have
And
to be a bin person. You have to be willing to deal with the digging and the people and it's a high energy kind of experience in some places, not everywhere, but the YouTube videos of like, we're going into the bins and it's just complete mayhem in there. I don't,
not very appealing.
I'm not doing that.
No. I have done some commission or consignment sales. I did a stint around, I think it was around 2014. I call it my divorced women shopaholic. group.
Okay.
So they there was a lady that got divorced, and she wanted me to sell some stuff, and it turned out it was kind of funny. She goes, "Here's my Harley phase." She had a lot of different phases in her life, and she'd bring me stuff. And then she told a couple friends about me, and so I did some church, or I call them the church lady, her mother's stuff, and it was church lady hats. So those did really well. But I think I had like 5 ladies that they were divorced and shopaholics, and some of them were even selling their previous husband's stuff because they didn't want it in their house anymore. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I went through that when I got divorced. I didn't have the shopaholic problem, but I had, there were a few leave behinds in the basement that he forgot about. And so it was golf stuff like golf balls, and there was a members only jacket that sold for some good money, from the 80s. And so I found a little treasure down there. And actually, in having lived in apartment complexes, you can recognize the boyfriend or girlfriend kick out pile by the trash compactor. It's like all good, it's like all good stuff, and somebody just dumped it there. Like in the movies when the wife is throwing the guy's stuff out the window onto the front yard. It's like that, but it's all by a dumpster, and they know somebody's going to come by and look through it and take some things. And so I'm always looking for that kind of situation. But why not? If you have the stuff and it's worth something, why not sell it?
Exactly. And I'm helping a guy that we went to high school with go through his mom and dad's stuff too. So of course, and we all know this, that everybody thinks their parents' stuff is worth probably a lot more money than it really is. But we're working through that. So setting
Okay.
those expectations.
So you tell people that you sell on eBay, and then they say, "Oh, will you sell this for me?"
Right.
Just word of mouth.
Yep, word of mouth. And then I get the ones, "Oh, could you show me how to do that?" So I've helped. I think I've sat down with maybe 5 people and really tried to encourage them to do those things. I think 3 out of the 5 actually did it. The other 2 just never appealed to them after I think I told the whole story, the good and the bad.
After they saw how much work it is, it's just a lot of steps. It's not that it's so much work. It's just a lot of steps, and you lose some people on that.
Right. And if you're not computer savvy, I think that's overwhelming for people too.
Yeah, it's just another layer of intimidation. They feel like, since they're not a computer expert or whatever, that they feel like they're going to make a mistake. And I think these days it's not as bad as it used to be, because eBay is a household word now. You see it in movies, TV shows, all the time. And I think people are less intimidated now to at least try it. But back in the day when we started, 2003, you said, because that's the year I started too. And just either people hadn't heard of it, or they just couldn't fathom that anybody would buy these things. And, the disbelief, for a while, and then they see you being successful with it, and they're like, "Hey, can you show me how to do that?"
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what is the highest dollar thing you've ever sold?
I think it was some, let's see, Hallmark kind of ornaments that they hook in together. I forget the exact name of them, But I went to an estate auction and they had tons and tons of Hallmark items in the box still. And these little guys were in a plastic thing and they did a little dance and you hooked them together. And I think it
Okay.
sold for 180. I think that was one of the highest. And then I did find the old Cutco knives
Oh,
at some
good.
auctions. And I sold those for like 200 one set, and the other one was like 240. And it was I bought them around $20. It was funny. I was at the auction and I sold one set, and so I was going to wait on that bid. And then I saw another one, and I'm like, "Hey, can you grab those too and auction those?" So I got them for $20 a piece, and it was good return. Nobody was auction or bidding on them. I'm like, it's like, okay, hurry and get this done because before somebody else finds out what they really got.
So you said that was an online auction or an in-person auction?
That one was in person. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's just so interesting to me how people know different things, or they just don't want to sell things that are a lot of money. That's me with electronics. Like, I don't want to ship those things. So, but you just never know what's going to be left behind for you. You just can't
Right.
assume that even if you see the photos on the computer before you go to an estate sale or whatever, you can't assume that, that cookie jar is going to be gone or that's going to be gone, because people ahead of you are so particular about what they want to sell. I know this guy that does fishing lures. That's all he does. He's an avid fisherman. He's retired. He knows a lot about them. And he's not going to do clothes. He's not going to ship VCRs. He's not going to do that. He likes his little tiny compact business with thousands of fishing lures that take up one little corner in his basement. So
Exactly.
yeah, you just never know. So you said you gravitate towards mid-century modern and collectibles.
Well, I have some clothes left, and it's kind of funny. The last 3 weeks, I've sold some coats, I've sold some jeans. So they've just been sitting there. And so I have started to sell some of those again. So I'll probably be picky on the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
But and cashmere sweaters always sold well for me when I was doing the clothing thing. So
Yeah, and I don't think it's not as brand driven as it used to be if you're doing vintage clothing, of course, because the fact that it's vintage, it doesn't matter what brand it is. People just want those vintage items, and you can tell, if it has the Union label on it or other signs that it's vintage. But back in the day, clothing was really brand driven, and it was very competitive. And it was like a rat race, really. Just, it was really hard to keep up with that. And then more and more people came to eBay, and the market got flooded with all of these current brands. And it's like, that's when I reworked my business. It's like, I need to do this a different way, because I don't do jeans. I just don't like photographing them. They're heavy. They take up more room. And when you're going through the racks at the thrift store, it's like they're kind of all the same. Like, you really have to look for those details. And, give me a cashmere sweater. Give me some vintage underwear. Like, you can spot that immediately.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
when I first started doing the high-end clothing, I was not that person. So I had to learn and read a lot about what's high-end and what. And I remember asking my niece and nephew, they were in their 20s at the time, and I'm like, okay, what do you guys like? What's the brand? Or, so.
Yeah, I was the same. I was raised wearing Sears and JCPenney clothing. I didn't know all this stuff. I just got into it because I wanted to know more about what I was seeing in the thrift store. And, at the time I started eBay, I had been through a divorce and lost my job in the same month. And I was just trying to keep it together, sold stuff around my house. And then when I ran out of things, I started going to thrift stores. And I didn't know all these brands. So I went to Nordstrom and the higher end department stores in Atlanta. And I would just walk around and look at the brands, feel them, like, oh yeah, that feels really high quality. And it was like a field trip to go through the stores and see what these brands were. And that's before you had everything on your phone. And I think I had a camera on my phone, but I was like a steno pad person. I was writing everything down. And then I'd go home and look it up and study it more. But yeah, I didn't know anything about expensive clothing because I was one of 4 kids and middle class neighborhood. We didn't have. Let me rephrase that. The neighbors on our street, they had better clothes than we did. And my dad would say, well, yeah, their dad makes more money than I do. So they can do all those designer jeans and stuff. We got Sears brand and Wrangler and stuff like that. I don't care. I mean, it didn't bother me. I didn't know any different, but some sellers out there assume that if you sell clothing, you have to know everything before you start. And it's not that way at all. You can learn just like anything else in life. Just spend some time studying and you can learn.
Yeah. And I have spent a lot of time studying. It's better than watching TV every night. I sit on the computer and read. It's amazing what you can find out. So some of the mid-century modern, the primary Pyrex mixing bowls, those have been, I just wonder when that fad is going to go away, but I've sold some of those for like $180, $200 for a set.
So you're talking about the ones with the little images, well, not images, the designs that are like the Cinderella bowls and the Amish butter print and all those kind of things?
Correct.
Yeah, I never see that in thrift stores. They're on to that.
Yeah. And
then you go to these antique malls, but they're really not antiques. They're just stuff that looks like antiques. But occasionally you'll see these sets of the Pyrex bowls, and they've got $300 or $400 on those sets. And
wow.
Yeah. So it is a thing, and you do wonder how long is that going to last. But with anything, you just pay attention, and when it's time to change your course, that's what you do.
The other one, my mom and dad had I was probably in the 70s or early 80s, probably. They had one of these, I don't know, 12-inch white RCA TVs that my mom always put in her kitchen to watch TV. My son was going to college a few years ago. My dad said, hey, you want this TV to take? And of course he laughed because it was probably 30 pounds. So and my dad was trying to, and we're like, nobody wants the TV, Dad. And so then I'm like, looked it up, and then I'm like, okay, Dad, I'll take the TV. Apparently, and I sold it for like $75, $80. Apparently gamers really like those kind of TVs now because of because of the connections. So it was kind of funny. I'm like, you never know unless you look it up. You'd be surprised.
Well, and back to the TV in the kitchen, we had one of those little ones, like a 13-inch. It was small, and it was on the kitchen counter. And my brother would sit in there on a bar stool with his feet up on the counter and eat cereal at any time of the day. This was when he was a teenager and they're eating all the time. And he just hogged that TV. And I was like, why don't you go in the other room? There's nobody in there. Because we did our homework at the kitchen table. And he's like, because this is near the food. Yeah,
Exactly.
he'd sit in there and
Exactly.
watch TV and eat whatever, mostly cereal, I remember. But yeah, that was definitely a thing of the late 70s and 80s when you had one of those little, I mean, those things were massive. They were pretty big, but they had the little 13-inch
Yeah.
screen, but the body of the TV was like, 18 inches long in the back. And gamers do like those. Yeah, especially if
Yeah.
it has it's the TV VCR combo. Those are also popular.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, you never know. You just never know.
I sold one of those TV VCR combos, and I actually sold it on Facebook Marketplace because I was like, I don't want to ship this. But yeah, it sold for like $75. It was free. So if you're willing to ship, you can sell anything.
Exactly. And another one was my daughter got married last year, and they bought the house of her in-laws. So as they were cleaning out, there was 3 or 4 original boxes of Pyrex ware from their wedding. So I got those too. That was fun.
Oh, good.
They've never been opened. So my daughter saw those and she called me immediately and said, "Hey, you want these?" I'm like, "Yes, I do."
Hey, nothing is off limits, right?
Exactly. And my kids are 25 and 21. So if they see something that they think I might need or want, they'll let me know. One good story for my son. Let's see, I think this was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I went to a yard sale and it was right down the road from us, and it was two ladies. Their parents had passed away, so they were selling their stuff. So I saw these, there was all books in the yard and all these boxes. And so I looked at a couple and I saw Masters, the Golf Masters, the annual album books. So they had a lot of those. And I had sold some golf shirts before, so I knew those were pretty good. So I started looking around and there was probably 40 boxes of books. And I'm like, I do not want to go through all these. And it was like summer and 80 degrees. So I looked at a few and then I saw a bunch of the Masters. And so I looked at them. I'm like, how much do you want for the books? And they're like, oh, $1 or $2 a piece. So, and there was a bunch of good cookbooks and self-help books, Bibles on cassette, all those kind of things. So I'm like, all right. I said, how much you want for all your books and stuff? And they looked at each other. They're like $50. And I'm like, okay. I said, I'll take them all, but I'll be back. So I went home, got my husband's truck, and I asked if anybody wanted to go and deal with me because I needed some help. So my son did. And we went in, and that was his summer project. We went into business, and he helped me. The truck was absolutely loaded with books. So he sorted and took pictures, and I listed and shipped. So I think we both came out with almost $2,000 each, and we split the profit. So he thought, after a while, he got bored with it, but he liked that money.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a story.
Yeah. So it was, my daughter and husband didn't want to help. So he was willing to help. So we made a deal.
Yeah, it's good to have a helper.
Yeah.
For heavy things like that. I went through a book phase
That was
too.
fun.
Did you sell books on Amazon or just eBay?
I on Amazon and eBay. I still do some books on Amazon. Since my kids are in college, I resell theirs a lot. But Amazon to me has gotten very weird. You have to get approval for, it seems like everything I try to sell as books and DVDs. Um, I haven't made a ton of money, but it was always usually pretty consistent with cookbooks and college books, but not so much now.
Well, it's funny you say that because, I wrote and published my own book this year, a personal story, and I wanted to get it on Amazon. And it was just such a disaster of hoops to jump through and proving. And, I got the ISBN number. I did everything I was supposed to do, and they just wouldn't approve me to sell that book because if it's already on there, it's easier. If you're selling Little House on the Prairie books or whatever,
Right,
they're already on there. But when you try to add something new, forget it. I just didn't have the patience. I spent like 2 or 3 days, hours just talking to the reps and sending stuff. And they, had to verify who printed it and just all this information that was like, why do you need all this? It's just a book. It's not like it's stolen property like electronics or iPhones or computers that get stolen by the truckload and then they get put on Amazon. I mean, that's the reason everything's gotten so complicated, is all these handful of people that are crooks, and it makes it harder for everybody else who's doing it the right way.
Right.
Yeah, I gave up. So it's just for sale in my eBay store. People find it, they buy it. It's on Google, you can find it. But I was just like, it is not worth this frustration and like mental anguish. And of course, everyone you're dealing with is somewhere across the world. English is their second language. You can't communicate with them very well. And it's just, I was like, gosh, what a hassle. I'm not doing that. Forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I used to put all my books on Amazon and I do it on eBay too, some of them, but I don't know. It's just not worth it anymore to me for Amazon.
Yeah. And so I did Amazon FBA from 2009 to 2014. And that business nearly sunk me just because it was retail arbitrage, and it was the rules changed all the time. And then you'd figure something out, and then there's 20 more sellers that have it for less price than yours. And it just became like a salmon swimming upstream. Like, this is getting impossible. And it's not the frustration, because I did put my eBay business on the back burner during those years to figure out Amazon, because that was like what everybody was doing, and it was exploding, and you need to be on there selling stuff. And so I did all that, and I'm glad I went through that experience. But if you talk to people who started at the beginning, back late, I think it's 2008, 2009 is when they start letting sellers sell other than books, anything.
Right.
It's like, it's so different now. And it's very frustrating because you'll figure something out and you'll sell it for a while, and then, oh, we don't allow that anymore. And you've got 100 of them. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So yeah, that was too much frustration for my tolerance level.
So I've sold a few things, but not much on Amazon.
Okay, so let's talk about how your life has changed. You're retired now. Are you spending a lot more time doing eBay, or is it still kind of a side gig?
I think it's still a side gig. I do spend more time. One of my doctors really recommended when I retired. She kind of scared me. She goes, make sure you have a set schedule. Make sure you do. Don't just live or sit your. I forget how she said it. She goes, make sure you have a schedule. Make sure you have goals and those kind of things. So I was kind of like concerned about retiring after she said that. It was like, mentally, you need this. And so I'm like, okay. And it was tough going from corporate America to being at home every day. But I now have a process that I follow kind of like daily. I get up, eat my breakfast, I might do my daily devotions reading. Then I go out, work on my eBay stuff, get everything shipped, list a few things. Then I work on about an hour or two every day. And then I go back into the house, do stuff I need to do in the house. And then the afternoon, I really try to devote to fun things such as crafts or anything fun, music, doing something. Just that's kind of the schedule that I have now. So it was a little rough in the beginning, but we're getting there.
Well, I love that your doctor gave you that advice, because if you read up on this, and I've talked to several people who retired and they ended up getting a part-time job because it's your day is so much longer and not filled up with things. You have to intentionally make sure that you stay busy and engaged with life and people. And just I always say, like, I'm never going to retire, because my vision of retirement would be like my grandparents, that they didn't do anything all day. My son jokes around about his dad's parents, that he's like, yeah, they're retired, but I mean, all they do is drink coffee and read the paper, and that they could be doing so many other things, like, being involved in activities that it's different now for our generation. Are you a baby boomer or Gen X?
I was born in 61. So some say I'm a baby boomer, some say I'm a Gen X.
I think you're at the tail end of baby boomer. So
Yep.
The baby boomers are changing the way retirement looks for the following generations, because if you see all these ads, like for medications or whatever on TV, they're all active. They're riding bikes, they're playing golf, they're, at a garden club meeting or whatever they're doing. They're all busy. And I love that. And one of the problems with retirement is that you lose your sense of purpose. Like, what am I supposed
Correct.
to do? Nobody needs me anymore. And people like to be needed, and they like to help and contribute. So I'm glad that our generations will have a different kind of retirement, because society and culture is changing to embrace that more active, involved kind of retirement. It's not just sitting in a rocking chair like Grandma Walton, snapping beans and knitting.
Right. Exactly.
So
That
busy.
would put me over the edge. That would put me over the edge.
And
but it is fun to do things you want to do and have time to do things you want to do.
Well, I used to go to the grocery store most mornings after I dropped my kids off at school, and there were these two old men that would take your groceries out to the car. And they were always worked early mornings. Their names were Bob and Tom, and they must have been in their 70s. And they were so friendly and happy, and they would, help me with my groceries. And I'm like, somehow we got into a conversation, and I asked them if they were retired. And they're like, yeah, we're retired, but we got bored. So we got this part-time job, and we only work from like 7 to noon. And then they golf the rest of the afternoon. They would play golf. And
great.
One of them said, yeah, I mean, I tried retiring and staying home, but I need something to get away from my wife. meaning that all day long was too much. Evenings is fine, but they were used to getting up and going to work and then coming home around 6, and all day long with your spouse when you're not used to it is tough. So I was like, that's a great solution to being bored during retirement is get a part-time job. And they're like, yeah, we're never gonna work the register, we're not gonna stock the shelves, we just like this, bagging groceries and bringing them out to people's cars. That's all we need.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That
So
is funny.
I respect
Yeah.
that.
So
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I definitely need a schedule and a purpose and goals, even though I'm not working, and it's a it's a good thing.
Yeah, it is. Okay, well, we've been going almost an hour here, so we can wrap it up with whatever advice you would like to give to sellers out there, because you've been doing this now for almost 20 years, coming and going, and you're around different life events, changing jobs, dealing with an illness. What kind of advice would you give to the sellers out there?
If you're just getting started, I would suggest read, and watch YouTube, just so you kind of get a feeling, understanding what the good and the bad. And then if you're once you get to selling and know the process and all that, be consistent. I think that's what I've learned over the past 2 or 3 months is um, do a little every day. It seems to be better for the sales that I've seen. And I used to like doing the binge things when I was working. I just spend a whole Saturday doing eBay and getting them, everything done. And but I don't think that's good for the algorithms and eBay these days. And then do something that you enjoy, have fun with it. If you like going to thrift stores or the online auctions, do what you like. I've gotten away from the thrift stores. Might try it this winter and see if I'm missing anything, but just do different things.
Well, and back to the binge listing isn't good for search engine optimization. But don't get hung up on that, because sometimes that's all you have is a couple of days a week where you can get a whole bunch of listings done. And don't beat yourself up because you're not doing 10 a day or whatever people say they do, because even if you only list on Saturdays and you get 10 done every Saturday, that's 40 listings a month. You're still contributing to your business. You're still working on it. And I have weeks like that when I only have a couple of days and I'll sit down for 2 or 3 hours and just list a whole bunch of items, and it's better than not listing anything at all. So
I agree.
It is a balancing act to fit everything in, especially when you're working full time, or if you are a parent, you've got kids at home and you homeschool, and all the reasons that lives are busy. Is I just want to tell the sellers out there, give yourself a break. Do what you can do. You're only one person. And you can always get back to eBay after you deal with what's happening in your life. It's going to be there for you.
And that's one of the great things that I like about eBay, having a side business, is I can go away for a week, turn it off, then turn it back on. You can't do that with business that you have to be there every day, or your own business, like at a brick and mortar store. But that's the thing that really attracted me to the eBay. Like, if I have something going on, is turn it off. We'll do that next week. So
yep,
I do
it'll
like
be there
that.
for you. Okay, well, it's been great to finally meet you face to face after all these years and chat about this. And thanks for agreeing to come on the podcast and share everything. And we'll look for you on the Facebook group.
Well, thank you for everything you do. I have learned a lot from you over the past several years, and I do enjoy all the podcasts, the Facebook groups. You just watch those, you learn a lot. So I appreciate that community.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing it. Glad you were successful with what you learned from me. Okay, well, we will see you online. Okay, bye.
All right, thanks.
Thank you again, Mary, for coming on the podcast and telling your story. You know that saying, everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Always be kind. That is so true. People only let you know what they want you to know. So everyone has struggles. Okay, today's trivia question is a food one. When and how was the Toll House chocolate chip cookie invented? Here are 5 seconds to think about it. It all started back in 1939. Ruth Wakefield, who ran the successful Toll House restaurant in Whitman, Massachusetts, was mixing a batch of cookies when she decided to add broken pieces of Nestle semi-sweet chocolate into the recipe, expecting the chocolate to melt. Instead, the semi-sweet bits held their shape and softened to a delicate creamy texture, and the chocolate chip cookie was born. Ruth's Toll House Crunch Cookie recipe was published in a Boston newspaper, and her invention of the chocolate chip cookie quickly became the most popular cookie of all time. And I have to say, food technology has come a long way over the years. Nestle makes a lot of pre-made dough products now, but nothing beats the original homemade recipe, especially when the cookies come out of the oven all warm and gooey. And I remember as a little kid, the school bus stop was about 3 houses down from ours. And as soon as we stepped off the bus, if my mom had made chocolate chip cookies, we could smell them. And my childhood friend Jennifer, she would always come over and have some of those cookies warm out of the oven because her mom didn't really bake, but she could smell those cookies from a mile away, and they were warm and gooey and delicious. And doesn't food create some wonderful memories? Anyway, next week, my guest is Pam, who lives near Vancouver, Canada. She is very successful finding and reselling free items. Her motto is, I love free. And it's funny, the day we recorded the podcast, she said it was 3 below zero and they were expecting snow for the next 3 days. And it was 60 degrees and sunny at my location in South Carolina. And I kind of got a kick out of that because in the South, the snow is a blessing and a curse. We love to see it, but nobody knows how to drive in it. Nobody knows what the heck to do. So anyway, that was kind of funny. Okay, thank you listeners for spending this hour with us. I feel like Carol Burnett when I say that. I'm so glad we had this time together. Have a fun week on eBay, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye.